welcome to this episode with me, Martin Franzen, running Welledge in the old town of Stockholm. And today I had the honor to have my friend Christian Pankhurst with me. And we're going to delve into his work with HeartIQ. And further on also that we have an invitation to you to take part in his work here when it comes to Stockholm. But you can take part in his work all over the world. Right now you're in Tel Aviv in Israel. So great. So, I mean, you started up as a chiropractor, but then you moved from that into a total different arena, although it's about the same kind of philosophy that chiropractic originally came from, you know, getting more of that aliveness into yourself, whether we call it spirit or whatever we call it, but that aliveness within yourself and connecting with others and living a more alive life and having a great impact. So tell us a little bit about your story, Christian, and because it's an amazing story how you got where you are, and you're continuously progressing, as I know.
Indeed, and you were a big part of that, actually, because when I graduated as a chiropractor, it was very much in the traditional sense of pain orientated, you know, like checking out where somebody's having tension and pain and focusing on where the problem and the block is. And, you know, that's how we're trained, you know, where we spend 5 years in college really learning where not to adjust, not really how to adjust and really take care of somebody from a wellness perspective.
Yeah.
It was only until I discovered things like network and your exposure to more of the principle around entrainment, where nervous systems can regulate and how you can make an impulse or an impact on my system and open it, and my body does the work rather than the chiropractor or the external. And I love that philosophy of letting the body be reminded of the innate wisdom that can take resources and use them to expand and open into greater functionality. And rather than the dependency model of, if I'm in pain, I have to go to a doctor and then they fix me, and now I'm dependent on that person to kind of keep me alive and open. So that exposure to this new type of chiropractic philosophy was actually really early on my path. And I loved it. It was like philosophically totally in alignment with me. And also as a martial arts instructor, I was very much doing embodiment stuff from the beginning. But what I then discovered was the power of sitting in circle in what we call an amplified field, and the power of having a group nervous system coming together and in training. And it creates almost like a togetherness or a unity consciousness where we can personally be impacted in profound ways by sitting in such a field. So as one person heals, we all heal. As one person opens and gets insight, we all get insight.
Yes.
So very early on, and I think it was also with, you know, the exposure of network care, is that we don't need to receive our treatment healing session alone. Like we can do that with other people in a group, and the group, or the open plan, if you like, can support that process. So there was this idea that group dynamics has a role to play in our own healing, that somehow by doing this together with others, we can go further than we can on our own.
Yes. Yeah, so beautifully put.
Yeah, so I was super excited about that. And so early on, you know, I experimented with different open plan settings. And then I started to, and I think, didn't you also do ISA back in the day?
Yes.
Self-actualization?
Yes.
Yeah, so, you know, we both came from that lineage as well. And, you know, I loved that as an introduction to my personal development journey. Very much, you know, it's related to NLP, changing the program of the mind and having a stronger way of looking at life. But that combined with the body work that I was doing started to create an integrated practice that I was super excited about.
Yeah.
And that's been a big part of my work, is integrating lots of different modalities into a cohesive kind of multi-dimensional framework. So it's a lot of people go, oh, is this yoga? Is it tantra? Is it therapy? Is it coaching? And I say, well, it's all of it. It's that and shadow work. Is it spiritual? Is it embodied? Yes to all of it. And but if I were to summarize it, it's an experiential, deeply embodied way to experience your full essence. It is healing because it helps you release the contractions and contortions where you've held trauma that is keeping bound energy stuck in the body.
Yes.
It's also liberating because it liberates the dormant life force that is bound through not only our mind, but also tension stored in the nervous system.
Yeah.
It's also yogic in that it allows us to expand and open to more love, to move through the body and to expand into emotional energetic ranges that we didn't know were possible. It touches into the shadow work because we look at where are we not being felt, where are we denying, where are we not accepting who we are, and looking at those parts and allowing those parts to come safely to the surface and be witnessed and felt in that by others, so that we can finally rest in our authenticity without having to hide or circumvent or put underground some of those energies that are so primal and core to our aliveness. So it really is coming back alive in our full energy, in our full essence, holding nothing back, and using all of the tools, body work, circle work, didactic personal communication and clarity, downloads and intuition, and you name it, it's all included in there as well.
Yeah, and it's beautiful work. I mean, I've taken part of your work when hosting you before in Sweden. It's some years back now, but it's a lovely process, and it's so congruent with the work I do myself. Although that's in a specific frame where it's much more related to touch, but the concepts and it's all so smoothly running together to bring that stored potential energy in the body and that information that's in that hidden story, and bring it so it becomes a fuel for whatever you want to have further in your life. It's a beautiful thing. And that what happens when you are together, that could never happen on your own. That part, that's
totally. I mean, there are many components to the process, but to give you an example of how the group supports the individual to go deep, for example, each member of the circle has an opportunity to take space. That is to ask for the attention of the rest of the group to be felt and seen and witnessed.
Yeah.
And it's through the practice of group attunement, the group begins to feel the nervous system of that person who's taking space, and can begin through practice feel into where are they open and where are they closed, what parts of their body is allowing energy and love to move, and what parts are restricted, and more specifically, what are the ranges, the emotional energetic spaces that this person has access to but also does not have access to. And then what we can do is, through the feedback of the circle, invite that participant to go into those ranges that are available but dormant. We don't try to access stuff that is closed or unavailable, because that's just pushing against the grain and doesn't work. We're looking at the things that are just ripe, the low-hanging fruit, absolutely ready to be claimed, and there's just maybe a little bit of energetic fear or a lack of an imprint, maybe a lack of being shown. How does it look or feel to express or be or receive in this way? And through maybe other members of the circle imprinting, or maybe through the support of other members meeting that energy, this person can begin to feel things that they could never feel by themselves. In fact, often, a lot of the times, the stuff that causes us contraction were caused by other people in our past. And it requires other people to feel that in a safe space, so we can integrate it and heal and then move into life more free. So that's what we do, is we take space in circle to be felt, to be reflected, to be mirrored, and then we get invited to, in the body, start to feel new spaces, emotionally, energetically, in connection with others, so that we have a new upgraded nervous system and way of orienting in our life. And literally, as one person drops deep into this process, the whole circle reverberates with that insight, with that quality. And that means we don't all need to take space for everything, because we can receive the medicine from everybody else, as long as we're present. And that becomes like the holographic, kind of like non-linear way. And this is also something that I love about, for example, network. They talk about non-linear transformation, meaning small input, massive output. So you can make a tiny little reminder into the nervous system, and the body can take that and turn that into something big. And what I love about Circle is that you can put in a tiny adjustment into somebody's field, and the whole circle acts as an amplifier, and it allows for that person to have incredible results and impact and change with very little effort. We can borrow and use the field and the energy of everybody's hearts combined to leverage into places that we could never have access on our own. And this is where it slightly differs from something like circling, because circling is a beautiful surrendered practice where we get to celebrate, really, the aliveness of what's happening right here and now in the present moment. And that is a huge part of what we do. That's the starting part. Yet sometimes when we move towards what comes alive, we meet up against resistance. We come up against our own internal, sometimes it's sabotage, sometimes it's our belief systems, sometimes it's our own contraction, trauma. Our own minds can have sneaky ways of blocking ourselves from taking the step we need to liberate. We will move in surrender to a certain place until we might meet against an edge that requires penetration. And therefore, my role as a facilitator requires sometimes taking out the sword and safely and gently cutting through resistance, so that that person can go beyond what they might normally go to on their own. If that makes sense. So there is this balance of let's be with what is, and let's cut through the bullshit and go to what could be. And those two energies we balance. The masculine and feminine are this wonderful kind of unified, sacred integration that takes place in the circle. So it's not about, men becoming more masculine or women become more feminine. It's like, how do we integrate these energies, both of them, and have them be fully alive and available in ourselves?
Yes, irrespective what gender you are. It's
totally. That's not even a relevant question.
The inner marriage.
Totally.
Beautifully put. And to some people that are listening to this, it might be like, it sounds like, oh, is this therapy? Is this something that to fix me? Is this something to resolve some issues I have? Can you clarify on that topic, so that this is not therapy? This is, exploration of humanness, of your humanity.
I would say it's not therapy, but it's therapeutic.
Exactly.
There's a slight difference there, because therapeutic is that you get the benefit of the comfort that comes through opening and releasing. But I would say the difference between traditional therapy and what I'm talking and proposing here is that in therapy, the focus is often on what happened. So it's a look to the past to open doors of healing to the future. Now, your past is going to come up, but it's not because we're going to go to the past. It's because as we create a safe space where your nervous system relaxes in the present, the body mind often will bring up in the present what you need to look at from the past. But what we do is we focus on what we call the open systems, which means we look at where is the nervous system naturally feeling ready and ripe and good to go, without force, without persuasion, or without manipulation, or without having to ask a whole bunch of questions or to work hard. So there is so in circle, we tend to allow what wants to emerge to take priority over, okay, guys, now we're going to look at what happened with your dad, and now we're going to have to do some processes to help heal and resolve your past issues. So we don't focus actually on problems or your issues.
Yeah.
What we actually focus on is, where are you open and where are you energetically shut down? And we focus on bringing more joy through your heart. And as you move towards your joy, everything that is stopping you from feeling that shows up.
Yeah.
So there's a very big difference here. We're focusing on moving more love through your system and then encountering the resistance to that love, rather than focusing on the resistance and the problems itself. So very early on in the experience, I'll be helping people translate what they think are their problems to, in fact, ranges of their own emotional energetic system that are shut down.
Yeah.
Because if people get confused with where they are closed with the problems that they have in their life, they're always going to be focused on their problems, rather than, hey, how do I open my heart? I mean, what if it was that simple? What if we could simply focus on opening our heart rather than trying to figure out our problems of our life?
Yeah. Beautifully
So,
put.
did that answer your question about
That clarified, and it just adds to what you said before, and it needs to be told again and again, and from different angles. It's not about looking at something that is broken and to fix it. It's where do you desire to be more of, from,
Indeed.
more alignment.
I would even go as far as to say that what most people perceive as their brokenness, damage, or where they need to be fixed is usually the hidden gold.
Yeah.
And it's, how do we turn our pain into purpose, our wounding into art, alchemize all of that pain and transform it to gold? Yes. And that is the process essence of shadow work, really, and delving deep into, not trying to, I'm a big fan. This is going to sound maybe a bit strange, and I will translate. If you feel that this doesn't translate, please let me know. But I'm a big fan of feeling our pain.
Yeah.
I'm not a sadist or a masochist where I just love to be in pain. What I'm saying is that, what if all feeling is intrinsically enjoyable if we allow it to move? That the resistance to feeling our pain is what is painful.
Yes.
And that, what if, for example, grief, when coming through an open heart, can feel liberating and cathartic and like a beautiful grace of the divine flowing through our body? Or how can it be possible for our anger to come through such a core sense of yes, or a clear boundary no, that it feels like fire raging through our body, that feels good to feel? So what if all these emotions, when liberated and accessible through the heart, allow us to feel joy in feeling everything? That it's not just happiness and positive emotions that feel joyful. What if the entire spectrum can feel joyful, including our sadness, our melancholy, our tension? How about all of it? If we're present with it and we allow it and we're fully in connection with it, that's how we define joy, is to be with it rather than the state itself.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And adding to that, to my experience, the same within network care and other cares, that as with a child, when you fully explore and be with an emotion, it do not need to linger. It can flow through you. The energy flows through you, through your whole system, and you can savor the wisdom that is in store within that, instead of you have a resistance and it's lingering on, and there's no wisdom that you savor from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say as well, another big portion or component of the work is not just liberating areas that we have maybe shut down from over the years, but also to receive a frequency of love and devotion and tribal regulation, as I call it, that is absolutely normal but we have never received, or we've forgotten, because it's just not normal right now in our culture. So, for example, most people don't have a good relationship with receiving love. They probably are better at giving than receiving. And I'm not just talking about just receiving a compliment. I'm talking about receiving life, actually. Like, you can take two people watching the exact same sunset. One person is perceiving the beauty, the awe, and is moved, is totally opened. The whole system just radiates and is touched and is allowed to feel the impact of that sunset in their system, their body. And the other person might just be in their head going, nice sunset, and nothing is touching them. So then the question becomes like, what type of person would you love to be? The person that can be experiencing life and be touched and moved and allow that energy to come in, or slightly numb. Now, there are people who are so overly sensitive, and I count myself as one of them, that when they hear that, they might go, Jesus, Christian, I don't really want to be feeling more. I already feel too much.
Yeah.
I'm so sensitive to the world. I feel everything. And I would say,
become overwhelmed by it.
Yes, exactly. That our nervous system just doesn't know how to process and integrate, and it gets overwhelmed. Exactly. So what I've noticed is that the work that we do in Circle, it balances. So for some people, it needs to open so that they feel more.
Yeah.
But for those who are ultra sensitive, for example, what they find are resources, not to feel less, but to create a container.
Yes.
And a way for those feelings to actually joyfully integrate into the body rather than being overwhelmed by them. So it doesn't just spin them out. They learn the tools to actually manage that amplified energy. So it's never just about, oh, let's just feel more and go into some kind of cathartic high and some ecstatic release. And so it's not one of those types of experiences. It's about adding consciousness to the feeling body, so that we have that, as I said, masculine and feminine coming together, the container, the holder. We get to parent our little ones, to hold that life force that is moving through us. And that's what I love about this, is that it creates an integrated human rather than just a human that is just like liberated to feeling everything, but now is completely lost in the world of the sensation and impulse and doesn't know how to consciously integrate that into their life.
And nor anchored in their body.
Yeah.
So it's exactly. That to become more present in your body. And I love the word container, and because it's like, it's very common with people I see that comes to me. There are high sensitive people, HSP, people that have been overwhelmed, overstressed, and so forth. So it's a very common phenomena in the culture today that people go in that direction when very little input can be overwhelming. So it's like the container can only hold so much waves happening to the water, happening in the nervous system. Then it's, and through practice you build that heart intelligence and the capacity in the nervous system to hold more and more. And for those that gone into freeze, being sort of like numb to sensory inputs where nothing feels alive, everything feels like blatant or not impacting them, you start again getting your heart open and that aliveness coming up. And it's a nice thing to notice in a group how that both those sort of like can benefit from each other also.
Totally. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, one of the beautiful things about Circle, you know, I was talking about tribal regulation, and just to define very quickly, is like most people have experienced a certain degree of self-soothing, like knowing how to touch themselves or take care of themselves through certain behaviors, activities. And then many people have been in relationship and understand what it's like to regulate together with somebody, to be held, to be hugged, to make love. Tribal regulation is where our nervous system receives the love and attention and nourishment from many people at once.
Yeah.
This is where we can be held by tribe, where we can be held by community, where we can feel the love and togetherness that comes through a group's attention on our nervous system. And for some people that might sound scary, but in fact, if you've never felt this, it's one of the most exquisite, oneness, unifying, life-changing, memorable experiences. And our nervous system needs this type of tribal regulation. In fact, it was very common in our, I would say, ancient past,
yes,
for us to be gathering and connecting and loving, not in a romantic sense, but in a tribal way, tribal love. That was very common, but it's been kind of like extracted from our culture. Yeah. And so, you know, there's a lot of talk sorry, my Siri's gone off. There's a lot of talk in our in the personal development space around trauma, for example.
Yes.
But most people, they refer to trauma primarily through the channel of violation, which means like things that happened to me that were not okay, that were kind of caused by another coming through a boundary. That's usually the definition of a violation. What HeartIQ now, in HeartIQ, we can meet all types of trauma, including those types. However, there's one that HeartIQ specializes in that often is overlooked by culture, actually. And that is the trauma that comes from neglect.
Yeah.
So neglect trauma is not what happened to us that shouldn't have happened, but what didn't happen that should have happened.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with neglect trauma is that the way that most people deal with it in their life is they become independent.
Yeah.
So they move into a state of extreme functionality where they go, I don't need anybody. I'm good. So the problem with neglect trauma is that you don't know what you're missing if you've never got it.
Yeah.
If you've never felt what you never had, you'll never know that you need it. So it bypasses any awareness, except when you listen to this and there's a part of your body that will go, oh, I need to pay attention. So your body mind will know what I'm talking about as I'm saying this. But there will be a part of you that won't necessarily be drawn to experiences that deal with neglect trauma, because neglect trauma is probably something that nearly everyone in our culture experiences, but we never know how to tangibly articulate it or meet it, because it's just something that's been covered by a cultural norm of independence. In fact, independence and hyper-independence is so celebrated, it's almost like we're pushed more towards, achieving more, doing more, rather than resting, being, allowing, surrendering, slowing down. These are qualities that we bring into circle, which reveals so much more of who we are and who we can be. And so in circle, we deal with neglect trauma by meeting those intimacy needs that we didn't know we had. And then when we meet them, our nervous system recognizes, and suddenly all pieces that were previously fragmented suddenly fit together and we become more whole. Yeah. And so HeartIQ becomes a practice of wholeness as we begin to practice asking for what we actually need and learning to let that in. Yeah. To really allow our hearts to open to receiving, and then realizing the sacred gift to another when we receive them. Yeah. We have this thought that intimacy is created if I give a lot, if I give a lot of love. But in fact, there is a secret to intimacy of allowing and reciprocity around me being receptive and responsive. Yeah. And when you can feel that I'm receiving your love and I can show you how your love is touching me, that in that moment is the essence of connection. Is not feeling another, but feeling felt by another. Yeah. And that level of attunement requires us to slow down, drop in, deepen, be out of our minds, be in the moment. And that's what Circle allows us to practice together. And it's my life's joy, really, to facilitate and be in these spaces. I've done this now for 20 years, spent probably, I don't know, 30,000 hours in these, amplified fields, working with groups. Since I was a chiropractor, I was only a chiropractor for a couple of years. And in 2004, I completely moved into group work.
Yeah.
And I've never looked back, but I've always felt I'm still a chiropractor, especially aligned to like the network philosophy, because I am specializing in helping people open their nervous systems.
Yeah.
And when that occurs, the wisdom of the circle does the rest.
Exactly. Yeah, awakening that innate intelligence to increase aliveness. Unify man spiritual with man physical, as Didi Palmer said.
Yes, indeed.
Let's bring back to, because you are such a great facilitator at the work you're doing, and let's bring back to that part of the container, because I think that's an exquisite part of your work, because to feel safe in a group, you need to have set boundaries so that you feel as whomever, because to become a tribe in a very short time where you feel that you are family, which happens when you are in Christian's heart circling groups, that happens. You become a family, and it's like you've known each other for ages. You feel that deep resounding safety within yourself and with the others. Although, as any family, there are movements during the weekend, although held within that set boundaries that are set out from the very beginning, so that you know how that you can lean into yourself and lean into the group and receive your facilitation. So for those that are interested, just like touching ground that, because to become a tribe can, normally one would think that takes long time, but there's a process to move us into that space of safety and co-regulation, and the reciprocity, the simultaneity of gifting, receiving that okay, if I give this, then I will get that back. You move out of that. There's a nurturing that happens in that space of collective consciousness that arises in the field.
Exactly. Now, for me, a container is not just created by a set of agreements. Anybody could set up a group, read out a bunch of rules, and everyone says yes to them. But that does not create a safe space. In truth, there is no safe space, because ultimately we're all responsible for taking actions, and there is no one external who's going to make it safe for us. So in a way, what we're doing is we're creating a space where we feel safe to explore our unsafety. So what I bring to create containment is consciousness. Because without consciousness, that's where the container leaks or becomes unsafe for people. For example, what's really important as people come together in a group is to understand that most people do not know how to answer this question. What are you doing with your pain? That question, what are you doing with your pain, seems like a simple question, right? But what most people don't always fully grasp is how they project, conclude, assume, overlay, that in the moment that they are in, so when they're experiencing a moment, they aren't always fully cognizant of all the different influencing aspects that create that moment. So I call it live in the question, not in the answer. Most people live in the answer. They already are in their trigger, they're in their reaction, they're in their experience, they're in their mind-based illusion of what they are perceiving, and they believe what they're perceiving is real. What we do in Circle is we break down the conditioning that causes people to be stuck in perspectives and illusion and in conclusion, assumption, and overlays. And my job is to bring consciousness into a field. And where you have consciousness entering a field, you now have people who are fully present and self-aware. They are self-reflecting and self-responsible. And then you have safety, because safety comes when a collective of self-responsible beings begin to share energy together.
Yeah.
So the quicker you can create consciousness and then resonance, meaning you sync up their nervous systems so they start to vibrate at the same level, when those two things come together, consciousness and resonance, suddenly the nervous system begins to feel safe. Now, initially, me as a facilitator, I'm responsible for inserting that consciousness, because, and that actually creates a dynamic where, at least if you're sitting in circle, you're going, I'm glad somebody's got this.
Mm.
You know, that's the words in your mind is, oh my God, I'm so glad that there's somebody holding this space. That's what people are referring to as, like, this space is being held. That doesn't mean through authority and being, trying to tell somebody what to do. But you can tell when somebody brings consciousness and presence and knows that they're tracking and seeing and reading the room and is able to bring out the sword, bring out their voice, use their full emotional energetic range to conduct the orchestra of the circle. And when you're in the space of somebody you know who can do that well, you relax.
Yeah.
You can relax. And it's in that relaxation that your nervous system begins to open. Now, eventually, your system steps into your own leadership, and it doesn't require me to be the one having to do that. And now the whole group is consciously activated simultaneously, and now we can move together. So I create the container or set up the vibration for others to align to, and then eventually I get out of the way. And if I stay too much in that role, then it can actually hinder the progress of the circle that wants to emerge into directions that I could never imagine.
Yeah. So
I have to work harder at the beginning, only to relax and enjoy more towards the end of a retreat, for example. But the container is absolutely critical, but it's energetic and it sources through the leadership of the circle rather than it's not innate. And if people haven't learned how to truly lead or hold space or bring that kind of clarity of consciousness, it's actually very unsafe. And I actually don't enjoy being in circles like that at all. I wouldn't ask anybody to do it. But I've learned through the years of practice, I know exactly how to do that quickly, because we don't have a lot of time in a weekend.
Yeah.
But it is possible to do that. But it's not a technique. It's something that comes through a frequency or an essence or in a consciousness that comes through.
Yeah, the practice competence.
Yeah.
And you talk about consciousness, and we've spoken about this in previous years, and I'd like to touch into that, your view on what this can bring to people in regards to the development of their own consciousness, but also being co-creators of the time that we are in now and what's coming forth, and what sort of our culture, the new culture that arises again for collective consciousness, moving from collective unconsciousness to collective consciousness, to that capacity that we actually practice in togetherness that we can bring into our daily lives.
Indeed. Circle is a microcosm of the macrocosm. So as in circle, as in life.
Yes.
And people come into an experience like this, it looks seductive that everybody's different and has their own life, their own problems.
Mm.
And yet what begins to happen, of course, is as time goes on, is like everybody is you camouflaged as them.
Yeah.
We're all the same. And what I've seen is that circle and the consciousness of what we start to experience in circle, when we take that out into life, especially with the way the world is quite fragmented and divisive right now, is that it brings awareness to the interconnectivity, even though everything in our literal evidence is showing the opposite. So what I love about what HeartIQ has brought into my life on a meta level, I start meta and we'll work our way down, is the fact that it allows me to become aware of the sacred interconnectedness when it's not even evident, when we see the news and we're watching everything breaking down. You know, sometimes things fall apart before they fall together, and it can get hopeless, and we can start to feel like, where is this going? I'm afraid. And I'm not saying that all things are just going to be rosy and well. I'm saying that behind it all, there is the fabric of I don't know how to describe that. It's like the perfectly imperfect orchestration of where we're at in humanity. Because in circle there is chaos, there is conflict, there is the unknown, and yet can you rest there?
Yeah.
Can you feel God there?
Yeah.
Can you feel yourself stable and present, like a candle in a hurricane, a calm within the storm?
Mm.
And if you can start to develop these qualities in circle, you have better chance of bringing that frequency and holding that light amidst the dark out in the world.
Yes.
And that is a combination of what I call divine embodiment in circle. It's not just consciousness, but it's consciousness integrated into the body. Because consciousness can be developed without the body, but we become more likely to new age bypass our way through life. So I'm a big fan of embracing our humanity, embracing suffering, embracing damage and weakness and parts that are messy and wild, and learning to live with that rather than trying to perfect it all into this lovely, presentable package that can then be offered to the world. No, let's bring all of us, the messy, the wild, the up and the down, the here and the there. It's all welcome, right? It's about welcoming it all, saying yes to who we are, all of it, including, you know, the parts that aren't complete and fully integrated yet. Coming down from the meta, the interpersonal take home is the fact that relationships are forever transformed with embodied consciousness, because what we learn in HeartIQ is a new language. It's a language of the heart. It's a language of how do we communicate, specifically conflicting trigger. So relationship brings up stuff, because the more we love and connect, the more safe we feel. And actually, the more things our body mind brings to the surface and say, deal with this. I've still not dealt with this. And it happens almost unconsciously, insidiously. We're not prepared for it. And suddenly our partner becomes the enemy and we want to make them wrong. And suddenly, do we have the tools to navigate those types of difficult conversations, those types of, and not just conversations, how do we meet it non-verbally? How do we deal with all this stuff that comes up in interpersonal dynamics? It doesn't just have to be through romantic relationships, families, mother and daughter, sons, all of it, parents, friends, colleagues, bosses. So there are all these interpersonal dynamics, and learning how to communicate clearly, effectively from an open heart.
Yes.
It's a new power that wasn't part of our culture years ago, because we had to learn years ago that power was projected rather than authentically and vulnerably expressed. But it's shifting. People are now appreciating more vulnerability as a new way of showing power rather than projected power.
Yeah.
And so this is an important skill that Circle develops, is the heart center, well, not just Circle, I would say HeartIQ, because you can learn that outside of Circle. We have courses, for example, that teach people how to develop this language of the heart. There are a series of practices that people can learn to develop that consciousness so they become more heart-centered communicators in the world, which is a beautiful thing.
For sure.
So we practice that too. And then on the personal level, the takeaway is more joy and happiness and freedom to live life fully as you are and who you are. It's a self-intimacy practice to come back into connection with self and to release the codependency and the many of us feel others better than we can feel ourselves, know others' needs more than we feel our own needs, let boundaries be violated because we don't even know or hold those boundaries. We're not always fully connected to our anger and our fire in a healthy way. We're often got trapped grief that doesn't know how to move, so we've got undigested heartbreak. Many of us are trapped in our heads. We don't allow divine inspiration to come through. Some of us carry unworth and core unworthiness, so we're holding ideas that we're not enough, we're not okay, and we crave for more confidence and a sense of I am who I am and I'm good with it and I can walk solid in the world. Some of us have demons that are acting out shadowy aspects of our personality, causing pain and sabotage. All of that we get to work with and liberate and circle.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we will have the opportunity to have you here in Stockholm in June.
Yes.
Which will be wonderful at Welledge.
Can't wait.
We're looking forward to that.
Yes.
So I will be posting with this, whether you're seeing this video or whether you listen to the pod, there will be additional information about the upcoming event in Stockholm, but also how to reach and find out more about your work. Can you tell me, you tell the listeners and the viewers, you're giving a seminar in Tel Aviv, but your base camp is New Eden in Netherlands,
yes.
But you're all over Europe and all in the States, all over the world.
Yes, we do the work all over the world. There is a website, HeartIQ.org, and there's a calendar of all upcoming events there and programs. And we have our designated retreat center called New Eden. And we moved in 2016. It's a very special place. And we chose that to become the home of HeartIQ. It's a place we do our deep dive retreats. So I love to travel and deliver more bite-sized, shorter weekend experiences around the world, in the USA and Europe and other places. And yet when people want to do the deep dives, or they want to learn how to facilitate or become practitioners of this work, then that requires an environment that allows us to go to a whole other place. And that's what New Eden is, and that's what I'm super grateful for, having access to such an incredible temple. Really,
it's beautiful. Yes, beautiful place.
Yes, indeed.
But you also do. You do live events, but you also do online.
Yes. So we have online courses that allow people to develop the skills specifically around the communication practices and language of HeartIQ, and learning the consciousness and the interpersonal and self-intimacy work that is really an important established foundation, really, to the deeper work that we do. So we have online stuff too, especially for people who can't make it to a live event, or they're far away and they prefer maybe something that's a little bit safer they can do in their own home, or maybe with their partner. Because many of these courses invite you to do this with your partner, or if not a partner, a friend, a buddy. So you have somebody that you can work the experience with.
And all those are on the heartiq.org. You can find the live events, the online events, the courses that you can tap into, and also your book. Can you tell us a bit about your book as well?
Yes, so I wrote a book in 2016 called Insights to Intimacy: Why Relationships Fail and How to Make Them Work. And it has a focus around, as the name would suggest, intimacy and relationships. And yet it contains a manual for the practices to come into connection and practice what we call dare to share conversations. How do you express parts of yourself, parts of your inner world that might be really difficult and might cause the other to go into contraction? But how do you do it in a way that keeps the intimacy alive and open, and in fact deepens it rather than pushes you further away? So the book was an introduction to the language of intimacy that HeartIQ uses. And it's a brilliant, oh, actually, I have a copy right here. Look at this.
Beautiful.
That's what it looks like right there.
Intimacy.
Inside intimacy, indeed. Yeah, and we also have trained facilitators. I've been training them since 2011, and on the website we're just building a new practitioner directory so people can search around the world for people who have been exposed and have learned how to coach either couples or done circle work facilitation. So we're growing this as the months and years go on.
Yes, beautiful. So, are there any final words that you would like to bring into?
I would just say that the greatest gift you can give to the world is to become a fully healthy you. And there is such an emphasis of people that I make contact with who are just inspired and want to give their gifts and serve. And what I found is that their service, their gifts into the world can be enriched if they can learn to, or not learn, if they can place themselves into environments where they themselves can be fully nurtured.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we're always giving in the world, we become like wounded warriors, a sponge that can dry up, and we sometimes need to fill ourselves again. And my invitation, because a lot of people who are drawn to this work, they're leaders themselves. They've been on the path for a while. They're not brand new to this. They're giving their gifts. They're doing a lot. And yet they're not always balanced in the output versus the input. And my invitation would be to come and be loved, be felt, be nourished. Give something for yourself that allows you to recharge, restore, reconnect, so that when you go back into the world, you are bright, you're alive, you're vibrant, and you're fully present, ready to let the world feel you. And because the world needs you right now, it needs to feel you, all of you.
Yeah.
I want to support everybody in bringing all of them to the world, for sure.
Yes, for sure, a very appetizing invitation.
And thank you, Martin, for hosting and for just being such a consistent presence and leader yourself in this incredible, crazy world in which we live. I love the fact that we can stay in touch and that our paths continue to cross. It's really, really cool.
For sure, yeah. And more will come, more will come.
Indeed. Indeed.
So thank you for now. And you have viewed this or listened to this, please check the links below. And if you liked it, like it. And please share it to those that you sense that they would benefit from taking part of this talk with me, Martin Frentzen at Welledge in Old Town, and Christian Pankhurst all over the world, and New Eden, Netherlands. And also you have Christian's website, the contacts information, and the invitation to the specific the event that will be in beginning of June in Old Town, Stockholm. Looking forward to host you again and having you over here. Thank you ever so much.